Hello there, it's Tom here, and welcome to the Enchantment Under the Sea Dance, Chapter 19, Power Station. So, like I said in a previous video, I intended this comic to be a fairly lonely comic where I would only really be focusing on one or two characters at a time, especially when it came to showing Annie and Kat's relationship and how they hung out and worked together. And you don't really see a lot of other people in the court despite it being such a large place and there being a full class of other kids that they know. But in this chapter, I wanted to have a scenario where a bunch of the kids would hang out after dark. And Kat's pretty excited to go hang out with them, even though she's certain that they only asked her along because she can disable the security system. And we see that Annie and Kat are going to hang out with Margot and Janet and head out somewhere to meet some of the guys from their class. So Kat disables the motion sensor and they hitch a ride with the Model H and head off into the court. And it should go without saying that a lot of the scenes in this chapter, even from later on in the chapter when things get a bit weird, are all scenes from Birmingham City Centre. And since at this time when I was working on the comic I used to work in the town centre, I'd collected a bunch of reference photos of buildings and scenes that I found interesting and felt that they would fit quite nicely into the comic. For example, this building here is one of the block of flats next to New Street Station. But anyway, the girls head up to the top floor and meet up with Winsbury, Matt, and John. And we have the introduction of a new character, this guy here called Jack Hyland, who isn't in their class but is someone that they're on friendly terms with. And he's let them know that he's found something interesting in the court, which is why they've all come out here. And it's revealed here to be some sort of big power plant on top of a large body of water. I guess for this chapter, I always liked the idea of a bunch of kids hanging out somewhere that they're not supposed to be. Not particularly doing anything wrong, just knowing that by being somewhere they're breaking the rules. And although they've come to see this giant power station thing, that's really just a reason for them to break out and hang out after dark. Like Annie and Kat discussed at the beginning of the chapter, these aren't people that they wouldn't normally see in their everyday lives. But just the fact that they're hanging out after dark, unbeknownst to the adults and the teachers, it gives it a different feel, and I kind of wanted to try and convey that in this chapter. But of course, I wanted to throw a spanner in the works, a spanner in the shape of Zimmy and Gamma, and they come bustling through the door, initially seeming like they don't seem to notice the other children around. And when they realize that the other children are in fact real and they are standing there, Zimmy goes into full defensive mode. And again, here's another example of coming very close to my pet peeve of using too much dialect in Zimmy's speech bubbles, but luckily that's something that I wean myself off of as I continue to work on the comic. And we also learn a couple things here. We learn that Gamma is a year older than the other children, but still in the same year as them. And we also learn that Zimmy translates what people are saying for Gamma, sometimes not actually translating what they're truthfully saying, because of course Gamma can't speak any English. But amidst all this, the event that Jack has brought them all here for begins to get started. Without going into exactly what's happening to too much detail, we see that whatever is happening over at the power station is causing Zimmy some troubles, which leads to the other reason I wanted to do this chapter, where we get to see a hint of what it is like to be Zimmy. And in the blink of an eye, Zimmy and Annie appear to be transported to some other place. But it seems to be a place that Zimmy is familiar with. And of course it's an excuse for me to draw lots of the back alleys that I've taken reference shots of in the city centre and things like that. Places that I'd kept in mind for scenery that I would use in Zimmy's own comic when I eventually come to drawing that. And I had a good time just drawing a lot of the background details and a bunch of the weird stuff that Zimmy sees in her day-to-day life, not just in this strange area. Like she explains to Annie, sometimes the people that she sees just walking around the court normally have these strange weird faces like these nobodies do, and it's Gamma that helps Zimmy determine who is and isn't real. So we also see that Zimmy is a touchy little pretty princess, and she flips out when Annie makes a remark about her trying to control these strange powers that she seems to have. But one thing that I've always had in mind for Zimmy is that the stuff that happens to her wouldn't really be considered powers. It's more like just stuff that seems to happen to her, or that affect her in ways that are tough to explain, and Zimmy's very aware of this, and she goes on a little tirade. And we get an indication of just how much she relies on Gamma. And luckily for Annie, Kat appears, and we get an indication as to why the rain didn't help calm Zimmy down like it did in that other chapter where she sought Annie's help. And this is just a hint as to what might be going on with the experiment that the court was performing with the power station. So with Kat in tow, they follow Zimmy towards what used to be an old Toys R Us that my friends and I used to visit very often every time we went into town, because Zimmy knows that this is a place where she and Gamma have agreed to meet up if ever they get split up. And here we find Gamma sleeping peacefully amongst a bunch of stuffed toys, featuring brief cameos from other famous characters, namely Jinklet, Marshmallow Kitty, Roast Beef, Ray, and my good friend Wrinkles. We learn that Cat's presence here was some sort of illusion, just like the other nobodies that Annie was able to blip out of existence. And this is one of the rare times where Annie pulls an expression that isn't stoic ambivalence, and was that back to the real world where it seems like nobody noticed what happened. Except young Jack Hyland, and at this point we can only imagine what happened to him in Zimmy's nightmare world. And so things start to wind down and everyone starts saying goodbye, and as the boys and girls split up and they head back to their dorms, Annie is determined to start finding out some answers about just what is going on at the court. And this is just a simple little bonus page that is showing the start of Margot and John's relationship. And Margot's a cute character that I enjoy drawing. And on the website, there's a sequence of sketches that shows what happened directly after John plays a little song for Margot. And it's not in the books, but it is a small little bonus that you might see if you read this page on the site itself. And that's it for this chapter. Come back again for chapter 20, Coyote Stories.